Hey, today I want to share with you the three main types of insulation that people use on their Skoolies and why we chose the one that we did. Now, stay all the way till the end to find out what we chose and why.
We're the Martins, a blended family of 6. In January 2022, we bought a bus and began our journey toward tiny living, travel, creating a life we love, and establishing redemptive communities across North America. Come along with us as we build our bus, lead worship, and live a life of adventure on mission.
We have noticed that there's three main types of insulation that people use on their Skoolie builds. There's spray foam insulation, board foam insulation, and then a little less known wool insulation. Now, there's pros and cons to every one of them, okay? So we had to do a ton of research. If you're looking into insulating your own Skoolie or van, I highly recommend doing your own research as well. We watched a ton of YouTube videos like this. We went to different manufacturer websites and dug into all of the pros and cons of each one. And believe me, there's no one perfect insulation. And as with most things with a bus build, the best answer is, well, it depends. It depends on what your use is. It depends on what seasons you plan on being in the most. If you're building a bus to go snowboarding in the winter, you might make a different decision than us. If you're thinking you're going to be chasing fair weather, then you might also make a different decision. So you have to kind of take your lifestyle into consideration and what you're going to be doing with your bus. We wanted to not be limited to only chasing 70-degree weather. And we don't love winter. We come from an area where winters are pretty harsh, cold, and windy. And so we would love to experience Texas or a Florida winter. However, we want to be available to go wherever God leads us at any given time. And so we want our bus to be all-weather friendly for the most part, which is really challenging because there's a lot of different types of weather and factors to consider with that. Before we jump into the three different types of insulation and how we came to our decision, I want to share just a little bit of education about our value, what it is, and how it affects insulating on a bus. So our value stands for resistance value, and that's talking about how good that material is at resisting thermal transfer, okay? So like metal, which this entire bus is made out of, is probably the worst because it transfers heat or cold. Think about it. If you have a piece of sheet metal sitting out in the sun in the summertime when it's 100 degrees and you touch it, it's hot. You might even get burned. Whereas when it's cold, it transfers cold air. If you've ever been in a pole barn or something in the north during a winter, all it's doing is blocking the wind, but that cold air from the outside is transferring through the metal. And so we already have that working against us. Thing number two we have working against us is our windows. We love the aesthetic and the look of the bus windows. We think they're super cool, and we wanted to keep as many of them as we could to let in natural light. The downside is they are single pane windows. If you've ever ridden in a school bus before, you know that they're super drafty. They're definitely not energy efficient. So we already have that working against us. We did take a few measures with our windows to help make them more energy efficient, like taking them out, recalking around them, and sealing them well so that we don't have cracks around the windows. And then I will link to that video below so you can see how we did that. And then we also plan on adding a ceramic film, kind of like tinting, to all of our bus windows. It won't tint it that much, but it will add that ceramic layer that helps insulate the windows. The only surefire way to make your windows very energy efficient is by doing a roof raise and adding in RV double paned windows. We didn't want to do that because then you lose the look of the bus, and that was me. I think Robert would have been willing to do RV windows. In fact, he's kind of debated on replacing a couple of the windows with RV windows, but I like the look of the old bus windows. So we went with keeping the bus window. We'll see if we regret that later or not. So those are the factors working against us. The other thing is when you have a metal bus, condensation is often something you're fighting against, especially in the colder climates. When you're heating the inside, but it's cold outside, condensation is something that I've seen a lot of people fight against. Part of that is just because it is a metal bus, but moisture barrier is really important because it's a metal bus and we don't want it to rust. So it was really important to us as we were looking at the different insulation options to find something that has a moisture barrier that is going to keep us from producing rust if we're in a colder climate. The other issue that we're looking at is space. We only have so much space to insulate, not like a house where you have like 6 or 8 inch walls to insulate within. We have a bus, and every inch that we insulate, we are also losing floor space and just 3-dimensional head space. We don't have the room to do 6 inches of insulation. We would just make this even more enclosed. So there's this tension between finding a good R value and a good insulator, but also not sacrificing a ton of space. And for our needs, of course, everybody's needs are different, but we wanted ours to be as all weather as possible. So we are especially living in this tension of, well, we want to be able to be in hotter climates and also be in colder climates. And what does that look like? How do we insulate for any type of weather? And it's proving to be a little more difficult than we thought. The first type of insulation, and probably the most widely used, is spray foam closed cell insulation. It is pros for it. It has a higher R value than most. It's probably the highest R value that you can find for a tiny home or a small space, at 6 R value per inch. So for every inch of thickness, you have 6 R value. So for example, in our bus, we framed these furring strips, and the sides, we built out the wood framing so that we have about a 3-inch cavity. So that means we would have 18 R value if we did spray foam. And you need a 21 R value with closed cell spray foam to meet that moisture barrier. So we could do a little bit thicker and do spray foam to have that moisture barrier met, where it prevents condensation as much as possible. One of the other benefits about spray foam insulation is it dries hard, it stabilizes the structure, and fills in any little air holes that there might be, little air gaps. The cons: it is expensive. For our 37-foot dog nose bus, we were looking at about a $2,400 price tag to have our bus insulated with spray foam. Now initially this was the direction that we were planning on going because it has the highest R value. But the more research I did, the more cons I found. It is hard to DIY because basically it's 2 different chemicals that get mixed together and sprayed at high pressure. If you don't have the temperature right, the environment right, if you don't have it set up just right, you can mess it up, and it can off gas even after it has cured, or it doesn't cure properly and then it smells really gross and you have to pay a lot of money to rip it all out. So we were looking at actually having a professional come in and spray foam our bus, which honestly, by the time you buy all of the hazmat suit and the gear and everything you need to DIY it, it was cheaper to just hire a professional anyway. It probably would have cost us about $2,600 to do it ourselves, or $2,400 was the quote that we got from a professional to come in and do spray foam in our bus. My major concerns with this, and the biggest ones on the con list, is it is a toxic chemical, and when it off gases, when they first spray it, it off gases for 24 hours. That is very toxic. You have to wear a respirator and all of that. And if it's done right, the EPA says that it's not toxic after it has cured. However, do your own research. It's not necessarily always that way. And Robert, my husband, has severe asthma and a lot of breathing issues that come with that, and a lot of allergies as well. And so my concern with this was, if it's toxic, and if it continued to be toxic after it's cured, the fact that we're in very close quarters, it's not like spray foam in your attic or inside of the walls of your house that are several feet away from you. It's spray foam that is right next to the head of our bed. It's on the ceiling right above our heads. It's in close quarters right around us all the time. And so I didn't want to risk the toxicity that may come with spray foam. So stick with me. There are other options. The second option that we've seen is board foam. A lot of people do this because it's easy to do yourself. It is less expensive than spray foam. For our bus size, it would be about $1,600 to use board foam. And you basically cut out the pieces to fit in the squares up in the ceiling and the walls. The cons to it is it does have a lower R value. It's only 5 R value per inch of thickness. It's not flexible, so it's harder to get in like these corners and rounded areas of the bus. And there is no moisture barrier. In fact, that's probably one of the bigger issues with foam board, is it does absorb moisture, and that can break it down over time, and it's not going to prevent condensation in our bus. Okay. The third option that we've seen a lot of people use for insulation is wool insulation. Now, stick with me. It is clean, natural, and a renewable resource. They shave the sheep, and just like a wool sweater that keeps you super warm in the winter, or camping socks that keep your feet from getting wet, this is how wool insulation works. It has a natural moisture barrier. Just like it keeps sheep dry in the winter in wetter climates, it creates a moisture barrier and prevents any moisture from coming in. It's a natural air filter. This I thought was super cool and didn't know about wool insulation before, but it actually cleans the air and permanently bonds with things like formaldehyde and other toxic chemicals. So I thought that was really cool, especially with Robert's breathing problems. Havelock Wool is the company we chose to go with, and they actually have a lot of great information on their website, and specifically information about building out vans, which applies to buses as well. They treat their wool with boric acid, small amounts of boric acid, which is a pest repellent. One of the things I found in the Skoolie forums and communities that a lot of people got kind of heated about is that wool is, because it's organic, because it's a natural material, it will also attract bugs and pests that you don't want in the walls of your bus. However, I feel like Havelock has addressed that really well by treating their wool with boric acid. It's a natural pest repellent. It's easy to install. This is my favorite part. With our wool insulation, our kids are able to help us install it. It comes in bats, like you see on the ceiling, kind of a giveaway. But unlike fiberglass bats, you don't have to wear a mask, you don't have to wear protective gear. It doesn't make you itch. It's not at all like that. It is literally like picking up sweaters, I guess, or yarn before it's made into anything. So I love that there's no special protective gear needed. They do recommend that you can use like just a simple cloth face mask or whatever to prevent the little woolly fibers that get in the air from going into your lungs. But it's been a dream to use. It's relatively inexpensive. For our 37-foot bus, it is only going to cost, it's under $1,000 for us to insulate our entire bus. So it's actually the cheapest of all three methods. It's the easiest to install. It is also a sound absorber, which is pretty cool. So that'll help with road noise and stuff like that. The downside is the R value is only 3.6 per inch. So it is the lowest R value of the three options. Why did we choose this if we want to be ready for winter conditions? Well, first of all, we're doing about 3 to 4 inches thick everywhere that we can. So we're squeezing out a little bit more R value. And so that'll end up being almost 15 R value. So at the end of the day, we had to choose what was best for us. And the two main factors for us was, number one, the health concerns with Robert's breathing issues and asthma. We just didn't want to increase the toxins that much. Yes, we're on a diesel bus. Yes, it's not 100% organic. It's a bus. However, if we can make a big step to reduce the huge amount of toxins in our living environment, we wanted to be able to do that. The second reason that we chose Havelock wool is the cost. It's less than half the price of spray foam. So that was why we made this choice. The R value, we are losing on R value. So if you're building a bus and you're wanting it to be in cold climates, then by all means, spray foam is a better insulation product. But if you're chemically sensitive or you have breathing issues, I think avoiding spray foam is just the smart way to go. So do your own research. We'd love to hear from you in the comments which insulation you chose to go with. If you've used Havelock wool, what has been your experience so far in your build? We'd love to learn from other people in the community as far as what is working now that you're living in your mobile dwelling. For us, we feel like this is the best option, and I guess only time will tell.